Vine sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone. The silence between them was getting awkward. She sighed, glancing at Jungkook, who was sitting a few inches away from her, busy in his mobile phone, scrolling through something she couldn't see. Vine. Jungkook, you wanna do something tonight? We could watch a movie or. Jungkook. Maybe later. He replied absent mindedly, not taking his eyes off the screen. Disappointment settled in her chest, but she pushed it aside. Fine. All right. She turned back to her phone, but the feeling stayed. It was hard not to feel ignored when he was so wrapped up in everything else. After a few minutes of awkward silence, she decided to change tactics. Fine. You know, I've been thinking about going to a party this weekend. You're coming? Jungkook. No, I'm busy. Wine frowned. With what? Jungkook sighed. I already have to go to a party tomorrow with my colleagues. It's work related, he said and got up to avoid any further questions. Wine sighed and looked away, throwing the pillow that was in her lap. She said, his work is never ending. We don't even have time to talk. Forget about parties. She scoffed. Fine. Fine. I'll go to the party myself, and you will have to look at me then, she said to herself. Wine felt slightly out of place in the grand club that buzzed with music and laughter. Its air was thick with expensive perfume and the clinking of champagne glasses, but the confidence she radiated said otherwise. She wore a backless black satin gown, dripping low enough to attract the glances her way. She didn't usually wear this dress, but tonight was different. She knew he was going to be in the party, her arranged husband. She wanted to know if he really even cares about her, or is it only her who thinks that, even when he doesn't show it. She went through the crowd searching for him, unaware that he had already noticed her the moment she stepped into the room. He was leaning against the far wall, dressed sharply in a fitted black suit. He hadn't planned on coming on this party either, but duty called and he was present there, just like she thought. She took a thin glass of champagne from the bartender and looked here and there while the moment his gaze landed on her, something inside him coiled tightly. The curve of her exposed back, the way the dress shimmered in the dim light, she looked stunning. She was his wife, and yet seeing her this way made him feel emotions hadn't realized he had. And to this irritation, other men noticed her too. Jungkook's jaw ticked. He didn't say a word or approach her right away. No, he stayed where he was, warning anyone who dared linger on her too long. He wasn't the possessive type, or so he told himself. And it wasn't just because of the dress, it was because she wore it. Minutes passed, maybe hours. He wasn't sure. He was just watching her, and then suddenly he went there, standing behind her. She didn't even need to turn to know. Jungkook, you like standing out, don't you? His voice was low. His gaze flickered down her bare back, then met her eyes, dark and unreadable. Vine tilted her head unfazed. Vine. And if I do? Jungkook took a step closer, his hand brushing against her waist. Not touching, just there, a whisper of gesture that made her skin prickle. Jungkook, why are you wearing something like this? He murmured, gaze going on her exposed skin as though it was meant only for him to see. She gave him a small, mischievous smile, the corner of her lips curving just enough to look daring. Fine. Why do you care? You have never done that before, so stick to your character. Jungkook's jaw tensed. I care more than you think, he murmured, his voice dripping so low it was nearly a growl. Her heart stuttered at his tone, but she refused to let him win. She leaned in slightly, her chin lifting to face him. You don't own me, Jungkook. Jungkook. Yes, but you're still mine. Vine raised a brow, pretending his words didn't send a thrill down her spine. Vine. Funny. You never seemed interested in being possessive before. Jungkook's lips twitched into a smirk as he reached for the champagne glass in her hand, taking a sip before speaking. Maybe I've changed. She scoffed, taking a step closer, her shoulder brushing against his chest. Fine. Maybe, but I'm not going to stop wearing what I want just because you suddenly decided to care. Jungkook, I didn't tell you not to wear it. I just wanted to ask you not to go anywhere like that without me. I just don't want anyone else to think that they can look at you the way I do. Vine's breath hitched, but she kept her composure, smirking as she turned slightly to face him fully. Vine. So, you like the dress? His eyes dropped briefly to her lips before returning to her eyes. Jungkook. I like it, but I think I'd like it better if you wore it just for me. Her heart fluttered in a way she wasn't expecting. Vine's point of view. Who would tell him that he is the only reason I was wearing it? She quickly masked a playful grin. Well, too bad. Tonight I'm wearing it for me. Jungkook chuckled, a deep, rich sound that sent shivers down her spine. Jungkook, that's my wife, he murmured, his warm hand finally settling on her lower back. Jungkook, but I think you owe me a dance. Just so everyone knows who you belong to. I'm not liking the environment here. Vine's eyes sparkled, enjoying this side of him far too much. Vine, and if I say no? Jungkook's grin widened, poor trouble in her expression. Jungkook, then I'll just have to stay by your side all night. Vine felt a rush of excitement at Jungkook's words. The way he looked at her, that glimmer of possessiveness in his eyes, sent butterflies swirling in her stomach. She hadn't expected this side of him tonight, and it intrigued her. Vine, staying by my side all night? No, don't. It will be quite a burden for you, Mr. John, she said as she crossed her arms and rolled her eyes. Jungkook, try me, madam. Vine huffed. So what's in it for me if I agree to this dance? He stepped even closer, his broad breath warm against her ear. Jungkook, you get to be the center of attention, with me right beside you. Isn't that what you wanted when you chose that dress? A shiver ran down her spine. Jungkook, then let's give them something to talk about, he said and extended his hand. She looked at his hand, then up at his face. Part of her wanted to resist, to keep him guessing, but the other part, a much stronger one, was eager to explore more of him. Vine, slipping her hand into his, said, just remember, I'm not an easy catch. He smirked, and as they moved to the center of the club, the music pulsed. Jungkook pulled her closer, his hand resting on her waist. Her heart raced as the crowd's eyes drew to them. He swayed her gently, and the way he held her, making her feel both safe and desired, made her heart flutter. Vine, you dance well for someone who usually stays in the background. Jungkook, I just had to find the right reason to step out. Fine. So, are you planning to keep this up, or will you convert to your usual aloof self by tomorrow? He laughed softly. Jungkook, depends. If you keep wearing outfits like that, I might just have to stick around a bit longer. Wine. Is that a promise? Jungkook. More of a warning. She smirked and leaned in closer. Well then, you better get used to it. I have a wardrobe full of surprises. Jungkook smirked. I'll be ready. As the song came out to an end, Jungkook pulled her even closer, his voice a low murmur against his ear. Jungkook, just so you know, I'm not letting you out of my sight tonight. You're mine, and I'll make sure everyone knows it. Her heart raced at his words. Fine. Maybe I like being yours. She finally confessed. Jungkook, then let's make the most out of it, he said and pulled her in a deep kiss with him in the middle of the crowd.